So you say the system feels unstable and that institutions cannot be trusted anymore, and yet you are still structuring your business as if predictability is guaranteed and regulatory continuity is permanent. Well, and let me ask you, did you secretly feel uneasy whenever policies shift because your strategy only works in calm environments? Well, comment below and let us know, as I would love to hear your response. Okay? Now, before anyone reacts emotionally, well, let's ground ourselves in what actually happened. Now, early this morning, the US Supreme Court ruled that certain global tariffs imposed under emergency economic powers required clearer statutory authority, so which effectively closed that particular legal pathway for implementing those tariffs at that scale. And that ruling created a structural boundary within the institutional framework. Well, what followed wasn't a dramatic reversal of the direction. It's also not a public collapse, but it is the activation of another legal mechanism to introduce a 10% tariff through a different statutory basis that remained available inside the same legal architecture. Can you imagine? And this means the first route closed, but another legal route was still structurally valid. Well, this is where most people stop thinking and react. While some, of course, call this strong leadership, some will overreach. Some call it instability. Now, if we strip away ideology and personal preference, what we are observing is something far more relevant to founders and business owners than trade policy. Okay? So we are observing adaptive behavior under constraint. You see, a boundary was clarified, and instead of freezing or collapsing direction entirely, the strategy recalibrated inside the remaining structure. And do you see that it's a chaos? Well, I don't think so. I call this structural navigation. And the reason this unsettles people is not because they suddenly became experts in statutory law, but because it exposes something psychologically uncomfortable, which is that systems are rarely single-lane highways, and authority frameworks are layered in ways most people never examined until they are tested. Humans prefer fixed lanes because fixed lanes reduce anxiety. Make sense? Founders and business owners especially prefer fixed lanes because predictability allows planning, forecasting, and emotional calm. But leadership at higher levels often involves understanding the architecture of systems, knowing which levers are connected to which mechanisms, and recognizing that when one door closes, another door inside the same building might still be open. Okay? So let's talk about cycles for the moment, because to me, that's not random timing. If you have been following my channel, you do know I talk about the differences between period 8 and period 9. Now, period 8, if you remember, we want the patience, hierarchy, and slow negotiation. And institutions operated with enough stability that the founders and business owners could build long-term strategies assuming continuity, which allowed emotional attachment to predictability to grow quietly over time. But period 9 doesn't operate that way. If you recall what I posted a few months ago about the achievement global chart for 2026, it carries very strong fire. And you remember fire amplifies visibility, accelerates exposures, and shortens reaction windows. And this means friction surfaces faster and adjustment becomes more visible. Now, in these fire-dominant cycles, hesitation doesn't stay hidden. And when hesitation is visible, it can be interpreted as weakness, which changes how leaders behave under pressure. Now, that doesn't mean recklessness becomes acceptable, but it does mean decisiveness becomes more valuable than prolonged negotiation when visibility is high. Now, bring this back to your world, because unless this hits home, it remains intellectual. Imagine you built your entire acquisition systems around one digital platform that delivered predictable leads for 3 years, and you internalize that consistency as part of your identity as a strategic founder or business owner. And then one day, the algorithm shifts in a way that reduces riches and increases cost. Your first reaction is frustration, and your second reaction could well be disbelief, and your third reaction may even be resentment, because you feel as though something stable was taken from you. Can you relate to that? Comment below and let me know. Now, ask yourself honestly, did you feel immediate emotional stress if your primary revenue channel weakened for 60 days and you had no diversified fallback strategy? Well, comment below and let us know, as I would love to hear a response. And that question is really not about embarrassment, but you see, it's about structural resilience. You see, if your revenue collapses when one lever disappears, then what you call strategic focus was actually concentration risk, and what you call efficiency was actually fragility. Now let's go deeper into ego, okay? Because ego is where founders and business owners get trapped most of the time. You see, when something works consistently, you begin to believe that it was because of you rather than because of cyclical conditions that happened to align with your model. Success builds confidence, and confidence builds attachment, and attachment builds blind spots. When the environment shifts, the founder and business owner often interpret the shift as unfairness rather than structural evolution. Period 8 allowed that blind spot to survive longer because the environment moves slowly. But period 9 exposes that blind spot faster because acceleration reveals structural weakness quickly. Now let's examine 3 detailed founder scenarios instead of speaking in abstractions, shall we? Now first, imagine a property investor who structured an entire portfolio around a favorable tax interpretation, which allowed leverage optimizations under a specific regulatory condition. And for years, that condition remained stable, profits were consistent, and expansion felt rational. Then one fine day, regulatory interpretation tightens, and the leverage rules adjust, and suddenly cash flow projections weaken. So one founder reacts with outrage and blames the policymakers for unpredictability, while another founder calmly restructures holdings, reduces exposure, and adjusts portfolio design to fit the new framework. The external shift is identical, remember, but the internal shift is not. Now, second scenario, let's imagine a consultant whose revenue depends heavily on one corporate contract that accounts for, say, 40% of the annual income. And that corporate client undergoes internal restructuring and reduces external consulting budgets. So one consultant spends months feeling betrayed and arguing about fairness, while another consultant activates dormant leads, expands partnerships, and rebuilds pipeline momentum. You see, the difference is not about intelligence, it's about adaptability. Now, the third scenario, let's talk about a digital entrepreneur whose funnel depends entirely on one platform's paid advertising algorithm. And when that algo shifts the entrepreneur, when the algo algorithm shifts, the entrepreneur must choose between blaming the platform or diversifying acquisition channels. You see, what's common in all these 3 cases? The constraint is structural, isn't it? And the question is psychological. Now let's turn to a broader pattern. There is crucial difference between arbitrary power and adaptive power, and conflating them creates unnecessary outrage. So first of all, arbitrary power. Arbitrary power ignores boundaries and behaves as if limits do not apply. On the other hand, adaptive power recognizes boundaries and searches for alternative mechanisms that remain legally valid inside the architecture. Now back to the tariff situation in the United States. A court clarified a boundary. Another statutory pathway was used that remained within the legal structure. Now, you may disagree with the policy outcome. I can't stop you. But you see the behavioral pattern was adaptation inside constraint rather than disregard for constraint. So let me ask something directly, and I want honest engagement rather than safe neutrality, okay? So do you prefer stability so much that you subconsciously design your business to avoid any environment where rules might shift, even though you know deep down that accelerated cycles are becoming the norm? Comment below and let us know, as I would love to hear your response, okay? Now, the reason why I'm asking this is that Period 9 rewards founders who can operate under visibility, under speed, and under constraint without collapsing emotionally. It punishes, on the other hand, those founders who cling to past structures, hoping continuity will return. So now let's talk about expectation for 2026 with clarity rather than optimism. You should expect institutional stress testing, which means regulatory interpretations will be examined publicly. Policy levers will be activated creatively, and authority boundaries will be clarified more frequently. Now, you should expect faster exposure cycles, which means weak positioning, weak operational systems, and weak leadership coherence will surface more quickly. You should expect competitors to move with less hesitation because accelerated cycles increase the cost of delay. Now, if your nervous system cannot tolerate visible change, you will feel exhausted. If your internal structure is diversified and disciplined, you will feel opportunity instead of chaos. Now, here's the uncomfortable final question. Are you ready for this? So when the system pushes back on you this year and it works in some form, will you interpret it as personal injustice? Will you treat it as structural data and redesign your route inside the framework that remains available? Well, comment below and let us know, as well. I would love to hear your response, okay? Now, once again, throughout this video is never about politics. I'm just talking about postures. In a far dominant cycle right now, composure under constraint becomes visible strength because everything else, including outrage and hesitation, is amplified. And if this conversation unsettles you, well, take it as information. And if it clarifies something, good, that's called positioning. So thank you for watching this video. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so. If you want more conversations that challenge comfort rather than reinforce it. And if you want to continue analyzing structural shifts calmly rather than reacting emotionally, come join my Destiny Architects Telegram chat, where we go deeper into what accelerated cycle actually demands from founders and business owners who intend to stay ahead. And now I'll leave you with the simplest confrontation. Are you building a world? Are you building for a world that no longer exists? Or are you building for the world that's already accelerating around you? So comment below, let us know, as I would love to hear from you. Once again, thank you for watching. I'll see you